Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න. Work and learn. Meet Light Meet Max සක්‍රිය කර ගැනීමට MySLT app එකට log වෙන්න.
දැන් Signal Herbal 99ක් විශ්වවිද්‍යාල සමග සටන් කරයි.
In your headlines tonight, Neighbourhood First. Indian Premier Narendra Modi says supportive of Sri Lankan people's quest for stability and economic recovery in his congratulatory message to President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Bring in the dollars. Sri Lankan ambassador to China Dr. Palitha Kohona invites more Chinese companies to invest in Sri Lanka, mainly in those spaces developed by China itself. Up and running. National Fuel Pass system goes live at most filling stations. Petrol and diesel to be issued under a weekly quota. A new wave. Health officials up their calls to the public to adhere to COVID control regulations, especially to wear face masks without fail. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Tuesday, the 26th of July, 2022.
Vim Deera milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. Joining you tonight on First at 9, I'm Indivari Amuatta. In your top story tonight, the National Fuel Pass system was officially launched today at most of the filling stations across the island. As per the system, vehicle owners are granted a weekly quota of petrol or diesel in an effort to manage existing fuel stocks in the country. According to Power and Energy Minister Kanchana Wijesekara, all filling stations across the island are expected to have the technical capacity to facilitate the National Fuel Pass system from the 1st of August.
In a bid to end fuel queues while ensuring an efficient process to dispense fuel, the National Fuel Pass system was officially launched today at most refueling stations owned by the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and Lanka Indian Oil Company across the island. This project will be in place simultaneously to the issuance of fuel as per the final digit of vehicle number plates, since some of the filling stations face technical difficulties in implementing the project. According to the Ministry of Power and Energy, the National Fuel Pass system will be available at all refueling stations island-wide from the 1st of August. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara tweeted that vehicle users who are unable to register their vehicle chassis number will be able to register with their revenue license from Friday. He also said that owners of bikes with 49-cylinder capacity should register with the Department of Motor Traffic to obtain their licenses before registering for the National Fuel Pass system. Under this system, which works on a QR code, petrol and diesel will be issued to vehicles based on a weekly quota. Accordingly, the weekly quota of petrol for both cars and vans will be 20 litres. For lorries, the petrol quota is 50 litres. Motorcycles will have a quota of 4 litres, while the quota allocated for three-wheelers is 5 litres. As for diesel, buses are entitled for a weekly diesel quota of 40 litres, while cars and vans can get up to 20 litres. Lorries can fill their tanks with 50 litres for a week, while three-wheelers are entitled up to 5 litres. Meanwhile, Minister Wijesekara requested all three-wheel users to register their three-wheelers at the police station of their respective areas and nominate a fuel station before the 31st of July. According to the minister, three-wheelers will only be allowed to obtain fuel from their registered fuel station from the 1st of August. Further, those who own fuel-powered garden equipment, generators and other equipment are required to register at their respective divisional secretariats with their weekly fuel requirement and to nominate a fuel station to obtain the requirement.
තවත් නෞකා 6ක් සඳහා ඇනවුම් දැනට දමමින් තිබෙනවා. දැනට තියෙන තත්ත්වය හැටියට අපිට යම් අභියෝගයක් තියෙනවා. ඊළඟ නව් කීපය මිලදී ගන්න. එනිසා අපි ඊළඟ සතියේ තමයි අපි වෙනකට අපි උත්සාහ කරනවා මේ නැව් වලට අවශ්‍ය පෙරගෙබීම් කරලා මේ රට ඇතුළට ලබා ගන්න. අපි දැන් තීන්දුවක් ගත්ත ඇත්තටම මින් පසුව හැම මාසෙම පළවෙනිදා රාත්‍රියේ සහ 15 වෙනිදා රාත්‍රියේ මේ දින දෙකේ තමයි අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම මිල සංශෝධනය වෙන්නේ. මේ අනුව අපේ පළවෙනිදට තියෙනවා මිල සංශෝධනයක් ආයේ. ඒතර මේ මිල සංශෝධනය ඇතුලේ වෙළඳ පොලේ මිලත් එක්ක බොහෝ දුරට අපිට පේනවා මිල අඩු වෙගෙන යන ප්‍රමාණයක් පේනවා. ඒ නිසා මම හිතනවා ඊළඟ මිල සංශෝධනය ඇතුලේත් යම්කිසි අඩුවීමක් සිදු වෙයි කියලා.
In other developments, a stock of 1,900 litres of fuel was seized in Hambantota yesterday during a raid carried out by police. The raid that was conducted following a tip-off that diesel obtained from the filling station at Hambantota harbour is hoarded for sale at higher prices. A suspect connected to the incident was also arrested.
Now, Cabinet spokesperson Dr. Bandula Gunawardena said talks are ongoing to establish an all-party government, for which the first step was taken with the appointment of leader of the Mahajana Eksat Peramuna, Dinesh Gunawardena, as the country's premier. He went on to say that it is only an interim government that is currently in place to enable daily administrative activities of the country. Speaking at the Cabinet media briefing today, Dr. Gunawardena meanwhile denied claims that former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa is in hiding in Singapore.
ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඉල්ලා සිටියා සියලුම කැබිනට් අමාත්‍යවරුන්ගෙන් උත්තරීතර ආයතනයේ වන පාර්ලිමේන්තුව විපක්ෂයේ හා මහජනතාවගේ ප්‍රශ්නවලට පිළිතුරු දීම සඳහා සියලුම කැබිනට් ඇමතිවරු පාර්ලිමේන්තුව පැවැත්වෙන දිනවල පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ සිටිය යුතු බව අමාත්‍යවරු වෙත යොමු කරන ප්‍රශ්නවලට පිළිතුරු දීම සභානායකවරයා විසින් නොව ඒ අමාත්‍යවරයා විසින්ම සැපිය යුතු බවත් සඳහන් කරනු ලැබුවා.
අපේ හිටපු ජනාධිපතිතුමා සිංගප්පූරුවට ගොස් සිංගප්පූරුවේ සංගමයේ සිටිනවා. සිංගප්පූරුවේ නීතිපතිවරයා වෙත පැමිණිලා පිටපත් කරලා තියෙනවා ඔව් අත්අඩංගුවට ගන්න. විවිධ අපරාධ ප්‍රවර්තන සම්බන්ධයෙන්. එම නිසා ඔව් ඇමරිකාවෙන් වීසා ඉල්ලලා තියෙනවා නැවතවරක්. ඒ වීසා ලබා දීම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරලා තියෙනවා ඇමරිකාවෙන්. එතකොට නැවත ඔව් අගෝස්තු මාසයේ ශ්‍රී ලංකාවට එන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා ඇමතුමනි. ඒ සඳහා රටය
අතිකරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා හිටපු සැඟවිලා ඉන්නවා කියන එක මම කිසිසේත්ම විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැහැ. මොකද එතුමා නිල වශයෙන් අවශ්‍ය වීසා ලබාගෙන තමයි ඒ රටට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. අනිත් ඕනෑම කෙනෙක්ට තියෙන අයිතිය යටතේ එතුමා ආපසු පැමිණෙන බව තමයි මම දැනන් හිටියේ. ඒ පිළිබඳ අදාළ වෙනත් තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා නම් ඒකට අදාළ බලධාරීන් අපේ රටේ හිටපු ජනාධිපතිවරයාට උපද්‍රවයක් එලෙසින් සිදු නොවෙන්න අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු යොදයි. සර්වපාක්ෂික ආණ්ඩුවේ ආරම්භය සනිටුහන් කරලා තියෙනවානේ. එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ නායක රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මහතා ජනාධිපති ධූරයට පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. මහජන එක්සත් පෙරමුණේ නායක දිනේෂ් ගුණවර්ධන මහතා අග්‍රාමාත්‍ය ධූරයට පත් කරලා තිබෙනවා. පොදුජන එක්සත් පෙරමුණ හා අනිත් පක්ෂවලට ඒ අදාළ දේශපාලන බලධාරීන් විසින් සාකච්ඡාව ආරම්භ කරලා තියෙනවා. මම හිතන්නේ වැඩි වශයෙන් ජනාධිපතිතුමා තමයි ඒ සාකච්ඡා මෙහෙයවීම කරන්නේ. අනිත් අයටත් ආරාධනය කරලා තිබෙනවා. මේ ජාතික වශයෙන් ඇති වෙලා තියෙන අර්බුදය තුල විශේෂයෙන් ආර්ථික අර්බුදයට ਸਰවපාක්ෂික එකඟතාවයක් අත්‍යවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. ඒක නැතුව අපිට මේ පිළිබඳ ක්‍රියා කරන්න බෑ. තාම ඒ සාකච්ඡා මට්ටමේ තියෙන්නේ අන්තර්කාලීන කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලයක් කියලා පත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ. දැනට 18 දෙනයි කැබිනට් මණ්ඩලේ මේ එදිනෙදා කටයුතු පවත්වාගෙන යාම සඳහා තමයි ඒ පත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ.
Parliamentary debate on the proclamation of the state of emergency declared by President Ranil Wickremesinghe as the acting president under the Public Security Ordinance is scheduled for tomorrow. As per provisions of the law, a parliamentary vote for its approval should be sought within the 14 days of its proclamation. Parliamentarians of the main opposition, Samagi Janabalawegya, say they have decided to vote against the state of emergency, but President Ranil Wickremesinghe convened members of the governing side to discuss matters ahead of tomorrow's vote. The proclamation of the state of emergency declared by President Ranil Wickremesinghe as acting president under the Public Security Ordinance is scheduled to be debated in Parliament tomorrow. Parliament is scheduled to commence the debate at 10 a.m. tomorrow and go on until 4:30 p.m. Following the debate, a vote will be sought for parliamentary approval of state of emergency in the country. This proclamation was made by the then acting president through a special gazette dated July 17, 2022. According to legal provisions, if Parliament approval is not obtained within 14 days of the proclamation, it will be revoked. The Gazette states that the proclamation was issued in accordance with powers vested in the President in terms of the Security Ordinance to ensure public security and the protection of public order and the maintenance of supplies and services essential to the life of the community. Ahead of tomorrow's debate, President Ranil Wickremesinghe convened a meeting with parliamentarians representing the government side today. Held at the Ministry of Finance this afternoon, this was the first meeting of President Wickremesinghe with the government MPs following his appointment as president.
හිට පනත් කටුම්පත ගේනවා මේ රටේ තියෙන තත්ත්වය අනුව හදිසි නීතිය ගේන අවශ්‍ය කටයුතු අපි සම්පාදනය කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා. අරාජිකත්වයේ තත්ත්වයට අනේක වළක්වන්න අවශ්‍ය ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගැනීම සිදු කළ යුතුයි. නිසා තමයි අපි හදිසි නීතිය පැනවීමේ අවශ්‍යතාවය තියෙනවා. සම්මගිය මේකට විරුද්ධව ඡන්ද දෙනවා කියනවා. බලමු අපි හිට අපිට 134ක් ඡන්ද තිබ්බා. අපි එනවා සරල බහුතරයක් එක්ක අපිට යන්න පුළුවන් කියලා විශ්වාස කරනවා. ජාතිවාදීව පිළිහිටවීම සම්බන්ධයෙන්
නෑ ඒ ගැන මොනවද සාකච්ඡා කරන්නේ. අපි ආණ්ඩුවේ ඉන්නේ. ඉතින් ආණ්ඩුවේ ඇමතිවරු සියලු දෙනා සභාවේ. සලහපෙරුම් මහතායි කණ්ඩායම නෑ ඒක සභාවේ.
In the meantime, members of the Samagi Jana Balavegya have decided to vote against the state of emergency. The decision was made following a party meeting held today.
මේ රටේ තිබෙන ආර්ථික සමාජ මේ අර්බුදය උඩ ජනතාවගේ විශාල පිපිදීමක් තියෙනවා නැගිටීමක් තියෙනවා විරෝධයක් තියෙනවා. මේ විරෝධය මර්ධනය කරන්න ආණ්ඩුව හදිසි නීතිය පාවිච්චි කිරීමට අපිට එකඟ වෙන්න බෑ.
Chairman of the United National Party, Vajra Abewardena, will be sworn in as a lawmaker in Parliament tomorrow. He will be filling the National List seat made vacant by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Earlier last week, the Secretary-General of Parliament, Dhammika Dasanayake, informed Chairman of Election Commission in writing that a vacancy has been created due to the appointment of UNP National List MP Ranil Wickremesinghe as the President of Sri Lanka. The General Secretary has also mentioned that Ranil Wickremesinghe had informed him in writing that since he assumed duties as the President of the country, the resignation will be effective from the 21st of July. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated India's continued support for Sri Lankans' quest for stability and economic recovery through established democratic means, institutions and constitutional framework. In his congratulatory message to President Ranil Wickremesinghe for his election as Sri Lanka's 8th executive, India's Modi said he hoped that President Wickremesinghe's tenure will nurture economic stabilization as well as fulfill the aspirations of all citizens of Sri Lanka. Prime Minister Modi said he is looking forward to working closely with President Ranil Wickremesinghe for the mutual benefit of the people and also for strengthening the age-old, close and friendly relations between the two nations. Meanwhile, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka Gopal Bagle handed over humanitarian supplies valued over 3.4 billion Sri Lankan rupees donated by Tamil Nadu to Sri Lankans affected due to the economic crisis. The consignment was received at the Colombo port today by Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri and the Minister of Health and Water Supply Kehelia Ramukwella. In a tweet, Indian High Commission in Colombo said the donation included 40,000 metric tons of rice, 500 metric tons of milk powder and over 100 metric tons of medicine, whose combined worth is around $22 million. Also in May, India handed over a humanitarian assistance consignment worth over 2 billion rupees to Sri Lanka that comprised 9,000 metric tons of rice, 50 metric tons of milk powder and 25 metric tons of drugs and other pharmaceutical supplies. How bad is the COVID threat and what precautionary measures must we take? Details after this break.
Big 3.
Welcome back to the news. New cases of COVID-19 is on the rise as 119 cases have been detected island-wide just yesterday, up 44 cases compared to Sunday. Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardena confirmed that 5 deaths were reported yesterday. It is also reported that the Omicron variant, which was largely contained in Sri Lanka, has once again risen its head, but health authorities urge the public to take utmost precaution to prevent the emergence of a new wave of the virus spread. It is strongly recommended, therefore, that the public wear face masks without fail when in public transport or at public spaces and gatherings and even indoors.
ගෝලීය තත්ත්වයනුත් එක්ක දෛනිකව 20කට වඩා අඩුවෙන් වාර්තා වෙච්ච තත්ත්වය දෛනිකව රෝගීන් 50ක් 60ක් වාර්තා වෙන මට්ටමක් තමයි පහුගිය දින 10 ඇතුළත නිරීක්ෂණය වෙන්නේ. රෝගීන්ගේ සංඛ්‍යාව වැඩි වෙච්ච හැම විටම කොවිඩ් මරණවලත් වැඩිවීමක් සිද්ධ වෙන්න ඉඩ කඩ තියෙනවා. අද වෙනකොට සෞඛ්‍ය අධ්‍යක්ෂ ජනරාල්තුමා විසින් නිර්දේශයක් නිකුත් කරලා තියෙනවා. පොදු ස්ථානවල ගැවසෙද්දී මුඛාවරණ පැළඳීම අනිවාර්ය කිරීමක් නොවේ strongly recommended නිර්දේශ කරනවා. කණ්ඩායම විදිහට එක්ව වෙන ඕනෑම අවස්ථාවකදී නිසි ප්‍රමිතියෙන් යුතු මුඛාවරණයක් පළඳින්න කියලා. වසරක් ගියාට පස්සේ හුඟ දෙනෙක්ගේ පළමු මාත්‍රාව හා දෙවන මාත්‍රාව විතරක් ගත්තු අයගේ මේ වෙනකොට ප්‍රශස්ත මට්ටමේ ප්‍රතිශක්තිකරණ මට්ටමක් ශරීරයේ නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. එතකොට ඉදිරියේදී කොවිඩ් රැල්ලක් ආවොත් ප්‍රාථමිකයෙන් නත්කරණය විතරක් ලබාගෙන තියෙන අය අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම වැඩි අවධානමකට ලක් වෙන්න ඉඩ කඩ තියෙනවා. වැළඳුනොත් මරණය පවා ඇති වෙන්න වැඩි අවධානමක් තියෙනවා. අද වෙනකොට මිලියන 8ක් විතරයි පළමු වර්ධක මාත්‍රාව ලබාගෙන තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ තව මිලියන 6ක් දල වශයෙන් පළමු වර්ධක මාත්‍රාව ලබා ගත යුතු අය තාම ප්‍රජාව තුළ ඒක ලබාගෙන නැහැ. ඔවුනට පළමු මාත්‍රාව ලබාගෙන මාස 3කට පස්සේ දෙවන වර්ධක මාත්‍රාව එහෙම නැත්නම් හතරවෙනි මාත්‍රාවක් ලබා ගන්න. විශේෂයෙන් මේක නිර්දේශ කරන්නේ 60ට වැඩි අයටත් නිදන්ගත රෝග තත්ත්වයන් තියෙන අයටත් පාසල් යන දරුවෝ අපි 12යි 19යි අතර දරුවන්ටත් මාත්‍රා දෙකක් නිර්දේශ කළා. එතන තාම යම් කොටසක් ඉන්නවා පළමු මාත්‍රාව ලබා ගත නැති. ඔවුනුත් හැකි ඉක්මනට සෞඛ්‍ය නිලධාරී කාර්යාලයට ගිහිල්ලා ඒක ලබා ගන්න. ඒ වගේම දෙවන මාත්‍රාව ලබා ගත නැති 12යි 19යි අතර දරුවෝ කොටසකුත් ඉන්නවා. සැලකිය යුතු ප්‍රමාණයක් ඉන්නවා. ඔවුනුත් ඒක හැකි ඉක්මනට ලබා ගන්න. එහෙම නැති වුණොත් අපිට ඉස්සරහට උනත් කොවිඩ් පැතුරුනොත් පාසල් පද්ධතිය පවත්වා ගැනීමත් අභියෝගයට ලක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්.
Taking you to business news now. Sri Lankan ambassador in China, Dr. Palitha Kohana, called on Chinese companies to invest more in Sri Lanka, mainly in spaces developed by Chinese companies such as the Port City development in Colombo and the industrial zone in Hambantota. In an interview with Reuters at the Sri Lankan embassy in Beijing, Kohana said Colombo wants China to ask its companies to buy more Sri Lankan products, which will bring Sri Lanka foreign exchange to address the dollar crisis.
Everybody knows about Sri Lanka's black tea. We also are world famous for our gems, particular blue sapphires. We also produce a range of excellent high quality spices. Sri Lanka is well known in the West for its high quality garments. So what we would like to see is export more of these to the Chinese market so that Sri Lanka can address its problem, deal with its problem in a sustainable long-term manner. In addition to that, we would also like to see more Chinese investments coming to Sri Lanka. We have two large areas developed by Chinese companies, the Colombo Port City and the Hambantota Harbour and its associated industrial zone. We would like to see many more Chinese companies coming to occupy these spaces. As we have said many times before, at the highest levels, one of the major catalytic factors that led to the crisis was the COVID pandemic, which resulted in our tourism intake being reduced to almost nothing. From being the contributor of 12 to 15% of our income, it was reduced to nothing. So we ended up with a crisis. The solution to the crisis also to ensure that more tourists come, and we hope that many more Chinese will visit Sri Lanka. A repayment of around close to $1 billion is falling due this year, and we've asked and we've talked to China about the possibility of providing another loan in order to repay these sums. And this is still under discussion. We've also requested China for a swap arrangement. The funds will be used essentially to finance imports for Sri Lankan industries, especially our garments industry. Most of the inputs for our garments industry come from China, and the garments industry is a major foreign exchange earner for Sri Lanka. I don't think we are in the game of getting countries to match each other. We are in difficulty and we need assistance. And Sri Lanka certainly is not in the business of playing one country against another or getting countries to match each other. Our problem is ours, and we hope that all our friends will reach out and help us.
persistent profit booking, the Colombo Stock Exchange recorded losses for a third straight session today amidst ultra-thin volumes. Analysts observed that investors took sidelines waiting for a positive sentiment in the political and economic situation. The main all-share price index opened with an upsurge and continued to take a sideways drift throughout the session. However, towards the latter part of the session, the index tumbled down sharply with mounting selling pressure in counters such as Commercial Bank and Expo Lanka. The ASPI closed for the day at 7,630, losing 9 points, while turnover plunged to a near two-week low and recorded at 693.9 million rupees. Turnover was led by 27% contribution from food, beverage and tobacco sector. Meanwhile, foreign investors dominated with net selling amounting to 56.9 million rupees, breaking the buying spree of 8 days, which led to net foreign inflow of 471.9 million rupees. Well, EU energy ministers have agreed for their countries to cut gas use in case Russia halts supplies. Following talks today, EU members agreed countries should voluntarily reduce gas use by 15% from August to March. The EU said that in an effort to increase security of energy supply, member states today reached a political agreement on a voluntary reduction of natural gas demand by 15% this winter. The deal states gas demand reduction would become mandatory if union alert is announced in the case of security supply breaches crisis levels. The agreement comes after Russian energy firm Gazprom announced it had once again reduced gas flows into Germany to allow work on a turbine on the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, which pumps gas from Russia to Germany. It has been running well below capacity for weeks, and Ukraine has accused Moscow of waging a gas war against Europe. Russia supplied the EU with 40% of its gas last year, and since the invasion of Ukraine, European leaders have held talks over how to reduce its dependence on Russian fossil fuels. Taking you to global news very quickly, Tunisian President Kais Saied celebrated the almost certain victory of the yes vote on a controversial referendum for a new constitution. The new constitution, which President Kais argued was necessary to advance political reforms, replaces the one drafted in year 2014, 3 years after the Arab Spring, which would give the head of state full executive control, supreme command of the army, and the ability to appoint a government without parliamentary approval. According to the country's electoral commission, the vote turnout was low, where ballots were cast by only 27.5% of the eligible voters of the country amid a boycott by the main opposition parties. However, according to an exit poll published last evening, an overwhelming 93% of those who voted supported the new constitution. The initial results of the vote are yet to be announced. Speaking to the local media, the Tunisian president stated it would have been higher if voting had taken place over 2 days, but his opponents cite that the low turnout is a denying factor of legitimacy to what they see as a worrying move back towards autocracy. And that's all from us. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.